Hi, everybody. This is Craig, and I am with a friend, Brian Dickey, and I'm so excited for Brian to share his story of his journey, how he's become a blended family. He and Melanie have four children. Two are Brian's biological children, two are Melanie's children. And we met, what did we say, Brian? It was 2018, I think,
That's
at a
right.
blended together event
Yes, it was.
in McKinney, and then saw him again at another blended family event. And I've
Oh,
been
wow.
wanting to do this podcast because he's got a very unique perspective to share. So, Brian, first of all, thanks for doing that. I'll introduce the subject here in a minute, but just so everybody gets to know you, your family, tell everybody about your job, your Melanie, and the kids, and just do that if you would for a second.
Sure. First off, Greg, it's just so great to see you. It's been a long time. Please tell Gina we wish her all the best and wish we could. Sorry we couldn't see her here today, but we just love you guys and we love what you stand for. And you definitely have our support. We've prayed for you over the years that this will reach the biggest audience it can. A little bit about me. My name is Brian Dickey. I've been widowed for about 7 years, 8 years. 2016 is when my wife passed. My first wife's name was Shannon, and she passed from a brain cancer, which was a GBM, a glioblastoma type brain cancer in 2016. My wife now is Melanie. Her husband, Dan, also passed of a GBM, which is the same type of brain cancer that Shannon died of in March of 2016. So Shannon was February, Dan was March, and we met each other through a support group called, just it's a widowed support group on Facebook. And after about a year of friendship, we kind of found that we had a lot in common and started dating. And she lived in Chicago and wanted to get out of the snow, and I suggested Texas. And from there, the relationship grew, and we got married. So a little bit about Melanie. Let's see. She works for Liberty Mutual and does insurance stuff for a prominent transportation company in claims and supporting drivers who get injured on the job. And then myself, I am transitioning a little bit. I did development operations for about 20 years, and I'm looking more into product ownership and management of IT type projects. And I'm also considering the idea of franchising or doing a franchise. So I've been investigating some franchises as well in the background. Melanie and I have four kids together. Her oldest is Matthew, who is 20. He's at Oklahoma State University as a sophomore. That's Melanie's. And then also Melanie's is Johnny. He is 16. He is a junior at Walnut Grove High School here in Prosper. And he's into drones and doing all types of engineering work. And then my son, who is my oldest, is Peyton. He's also 16. They're actually only 30 days apart in age. And he is an ROTC, and he wants to go into the military as soon as he graduates high school. And then we have Carly, who is 13, and she's just kind of more of our artsy dancer, still trying to figure out life. And
Yeah,
she's kind of just living her best life in the eighth grade at Rogers.
that's neat. That is neat. It's good to hear about you guys and the kids. And also found out just a few minutes ago, we have a very dear mutual friend that you know, Lauren Howard, which has been a huge, not only friend, but also she's helped promote Blended Together forever, and they've taught our curriculum. So I'm excited to hear the connection there. Tell us how you knew Lauren,
Sure.
and then we'll dive into a few questions. But
Yeah,
this is
Lauren and I went to church together in Wiley, Texas. It was a church called Gateway Community Church. The pastor's name was Blake Switzer, and I ran soundboard, and Lauren was attending church there as well. And our kids are of the same age, and so they kind of grew up together. And she was there for me a major time when Shannon was ill. She was very close to Shannon. We were very close to
wow.
them, and so our kids were purposely of the same age. And we're very thankful for what they've done. They've met Melanie, and I've met her new husband as well. And we're not as connected as we used to be because we've kind of moved around a little bit, but we're still good friends.
I just love how God connects the dots when I see relationships like that. That was a
Sure, yeah.
nice when you're telling me the story. All right. Golly, Brian, I before time gets away, I was thinking of maybe just 3 or 4 questions
Sure, please.
that could not only give insight from your perspective to people that are listening to this, but it's a unique perspective. And let me explain to those that are listening. I came from a divorced world, then created a blended family. That's not where you came from. You, in fact, both you and Melanie had the death of a previous spouse, and then you blended. That has some unique perspective. You shared a powerful line with me that has stuck with me since I met you. And you said, Craig, there's a difference in how our blended family was created than maybe yours, because in a divorce situation, the pictures on the wall come down and you're quickly wanting to go forward with new relationships, new photos, new memories. But in my situation, you're wanting to keep the memory of the former spouse alive. And that just like, boom, lightning bolt. I thought, of course. Why is that important? Give us some perspective because that's unique. And it just made total sense when you shared that. But what? How did that affect you, Melanie? Why do you try to? How do you do it? I mean, just share about whatever on that perspective.
That's a great question because it can be pretty complex. The biggest reason why we want to keep the memory alive is because those kids only get one mom. Melanie never wants to replace Shannon. She has no intention of taking full responsibility or footing in the footsteps of a biological mother, which is really nearly impossible to do.
Right.
And so she wants to be understanding that these kids are grieving, even though it may be a year or two. The transition back to having an additional person in the house who is, kind of trying to play a motherly role may trigger them some. That A, it could be an anger trigger of, you're not my mother, why are you doing this to me? Or
Right.
B, it may be a trigger of, I haven't had somebody there for me to do that in a long time. It's a little upsetting and it's hard to figure out how to deal with emotions. Kids are still very new to understanding how to deal with their emotions, and it's important to kind of walk on eggshells during the beginning of that process. And some of the ways we kind of try to support, in our case, each other's spouses is, I do have a picture of Shannon hanging on the kids' walls so they can remember what she looks like. As time moves on and kids grow up, especially when they're in the 3, 4s, 5s, and 6s, memory fades. And so we have to have the picture there to remember who they are. We might watch a video here and there on my phone or some, video we took over the years to show them and remind them, this is some of the things you did with your mom. This is how she laughed. This is how she sounded.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of storytelling that goes on. And Melanie is able to participate in that and hear some of these stories and not be threatened by them. Many times a divorcee might find some of these stories or some of these actions we take to be threatening or thinking we're not over the previous spouse. It has nothing to do with that so much as just keeping the love of a person who was a part of our life that we will never forget. Like, I don't erase that portion of my life just because she died and things
Right.
changed. I want to remember her in a way to where the kids can keep up and go, oh yeah, that was my mom. We used to do these things together, and it doesn't get forgotten. Because at that point, I think it would make it weird or awkward for the kids to be like, what am I supposed to do with the last 10 years of my life? Everything I know and my foundation is based on this one woman. And now I have this other woman in my life who does things completely differently than my mom would have done them. And how do I bridge that gap? Right. And so by honoring the previous spouse, I think you're able to bridge the gap more easily because you're accepting the individual is like, hey, they were part of your life. They were super important to you. And we don't want to forget that.
How did grief impact you? How did it impact your new spouse, Melanie? And how did it impact the kids?
Well, when Shannon originally died, she battled about a 2-year battle with the brain cancer. You start the grieving process during that phase because she's starting to change. She's not acting herself. She became more lethargic, unable to think quickly and clearly. So some of the grieving started early on, as my spouse was not really the same spouse as I originally married. So after her passing, the grieving was more picking up the balls that were in the air and making sure they didn't fall for the kids' sakes, making sure the kids felt safe, comfortable. They were definitely crying at night and upset that they were missing their mom and didn't know what to do about it. I will say I have a newfound respect for single mothers who have children because I went through that for a significant period of time. And I was doing the laundry, the dishes, the cooking, the cleaning, and I was doing it all. And so I definitely know what it's like to be a single parent, and it's rough for sure. And so I was trying to do all of those things and grieve at the same time. So I am more of a private griever. I would try to create times for myself to go off and grieve without the kids' not acknowledgement. But sometimes grief comes in waves, and you don't have the ability to stop when it hits you. You might be triggered by something that's said, something that occurs with your friends or your family, and it just may trigger you to go into a bit of a grief, a little
Yeah.
crying process. And for the kids, it was obviously very painful. They still struggles with it sometimes today. Um, we've had to get them some counseling, which has been very helpful and successful for them. But it was hard to have a person in life who is so important to them just disappear and then not be able to get any of that data or any of that learning process. Carly, like how to be a female versus coming from me. Like I knew that I was way out of my league trying to teach Carly on how to be a little girl. And I knew that I needed to get somebody who could come in and help me. And it was my friends, it was family. I had a lot of people in the beginning just kind of stepping into that role as best they could. But I knew long term that I knew I wanted to remarry, and then I knew I needed somebody there for my kids. But for Peyton, he being the oldest, he turned into a much bigger protector. He wanted to protect us from he wanted to try to control everything as best he could. And I think he's really been helped with some of the counseling we've done in those areas because he was feeling like he was having to help fill that role for mom, for Carly, since I was trying to do it all and it was a little too much to take on. I didn't
Yeah.
put him in that role, but he kind of accepted a position of a little more of authority.
That makes sense. Everybody grieves differently.
Sure.
There's not a right way to grieve. There's not a wrong way to grieve. When I lost my mom and dad, I grieved. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. But the point is that we all have to deal with it. And so many people, maybe they get stuck. In other words, they don't finish the grieving process. And so those things that are not yet quite completed could crop up in the future. Have you seen any of that with whether you, Melanie, the kids, or do you think you've gone through the entire process? Now, yes, there are things that trigger down the road, but did you see any concern there about getting all the way through it versus just not getting through it?
Sure. There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to grieving on are you stuck? Is the process ever ending?
Right.
I don't necessarily consider a destination. I consider this a journey. And so the process of grieving does change through the years, but there are still times that I still miss Shannon and I'm able to talk to Melanie about it in a polite manner, like, oh man, I miss when we used to do these types of things. But it's easier for us because she also deals with the same things. I know for a fact when Melanie has her anniversary come around, she's a little more somber. She's a little more sad because she's thinking about what would have life been for just me and my boys if I was with Dan versus my new life that I'm in. Doesn't mean she is unhappy with the life that she has. I don't think she would change a thing, but she just wonders like what she just has those what ifs and why did God put me down this road? What is it that God is looking for me to achieve with all these changes? I think that those things come to light, in hindsight, 2020. And so,
That's great.
yeah,
I love the line that you said, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And that mindset of that's powerful for people to hear.
Right.
Um, where did you learn that, or is that something that you just learned through this, or had you known that prior to the death of your of Shannon, or was this just something that you just knew?
There was a sign. My first wife, Shannon, was a teacher, and she had a sign in her classroom, and it actually says, "Life is a destination, or is a journey, not a destination." And when I see powerful things like that, I really stick them in my mind, and I go, that's very true. Um, there's been a couple over my life that I've kind of lived by these kind of statements. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky or Michael Scott, if you're an Office fan.
Yep.
And then another one is people remember you, not the words you say, but how you made them feel. And those are just some three things that I take in life, and I take those very seriously. I read them somewhere, and I was like, those are profound statements, and I try to live by them. So that's just one that I did pick up. Yes, from
I
Shannon.
love it. It's great. It's spot on. Two last questions.
Please.
The first, you really had a heart for this ministry, for people that become blended, whether they are a single mom and then they marry somebody and become a blended family, or like in my situation, Gina and I both went through a divorce and we brought children in and created that blended family. You and Melanie each lost your spouse, and then you come together and you got kids. That creates a, there's lots of different ways blended families can occur. Why has this grabbed your heart? Because I can just see, one, your passion and your belief that this is so important. Tell everybody why has it grabbed you? Why it?
As a really good question. I find that churches are unequipped to
Yeah,
support men specifically. Churches are very women driven when it comes to the support level. So there's singles moms classes that you can attend. There's divorcees classes you can attend, but there's really, for us, there was nothing in the widow section for men to attend. So I was really left out in the wind with my church. They were obviously upset that they didn't have a program, but they didn't know where to point me.
yeah,
And through research, I found you and was like, this is clearly something that needs to occur. This needs to happen. These pastors need to be brought up to speed with the life of that blended families is a part of America for sure. Over
yes.
the divorce rate is over 50% at this point, and so it's going to happen. And now that I've been in widowhood as long as I have, I never knew any real widows, but now I know tons of them. I mean, I hear about people losing spouses all the time, and we do try to reach out and help these because we remember the pay it forward. People paid it forward to me when Shannon was sick, and we try to make sure that we go out of our way to pay it forward. And we've run classes like Grief Share with the church to try to support other widows and people who have lost loved ones. And I'm looking into even meeting with some men and having a men's study or a men's group to do something similar, because I feel like in this particular area, men are not supposed to be these vulnerable beings, but this is a lot to handle, and they need to they need to understand it's okay and that there's a safe space to do so.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with what you shared. Thank you. And then the other question: what advice would you give people? Your perspective is special. I love the fact that you hit on so many programs in the church are women driven. Nothing against women, we love that, but the men typically don't have, like you said, I couldn't find any help and support in this area.
Right.
But in your back to your situation, you guys came together after the death, obviously, of your spouses. There's others that maybe one spouse passed away, one spouse went through a divorce, and then they became a blended family. From your perspective, what advice for people that are watching that might give them some insight, maybe it's some encouragement as we wrap this up? I think it'd be powerful from your perspective, Brian.
Absolutely. The first bit of advice I would provide is don't see it as a competition. Just because they lost their spouse a year or 18 months ago and they're still talking about them, they're not stuck in a grieving process. They're still processing how their life is changing by being with you, married to you, and understand that they may have to keep those memories alive or not forget that the last 10 or 20 years existed. as part of their life, and that it's not a slam on you as an individual. Just they're still processing emotions and how their life has changed over the short period, and it's not a competition. You're not fighting a ghost, which is a common term that people will talk about. And so having a single picture, Melanie still has a picture of their wedding picture hung up in a cabinet. It's not for all to see, but it is there. I have a wedding picture sitting around somewhere because it's part of our story. It's part of our journey that Christ has led us down, and we've took some lemons and turned them into lemonade as best we could. Also, let's see. Keeping it alive for the kids, talking about funny moments that the previous spouse had. It was important for my kids. My kids would wear a lot of her shirts, like t-shirts, sleep in them and stuff like that, to have that memory and that smell. Uh,
Yeah.
and telling the stories is big, because now that my current wife Melanie can laugh and joke about some of these things she heard. Shannon and most people are quirky people. I'm a quirky person, and so she definitely had her quirks, and so it's able to be able. It's fun to be able to go back and look at some of those things and really have a good chuckle and laugh and say, she's looking down on us right now, and she'd probably really appreciate that we're having this conversation. And Melanie has really stepped in to be a great advocate for keeping Shannon's memories alive and discussing and talking about the things and the expectations that Shannon would have had. So that way, when we parent, we consider what Shannon probably would have done as part of her parenting style. And same with Dan. Dan was a very fun-loving guy. I'm kind of more of a, like you, probably a little more controlling. And so I have to be like, okay, remember these boys were used to a little more, lax lifestyle. So try to take a little bit of what I think Dan's perspective would be based on the stories I've heard, a little perspective of who I am as a person, and say, can we figure out to make some sort of blended, parenting style that kind of keeps the old alive, but keeps the new, and keeps me not going crazy with, the need for structure.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Ryan, thank you for sharing this. This is going to be a big impact for people to
I
watch.
really hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it being here. Thank you.